Hello there, wonderful people. It has been more than a year since this video got uploaded to the YouTubes. More experience and a new update. This video deserves to be updated. Let's dive right in. And wait a second, I nearly forgot. At the end, I will give you some tips. Small weapons. Let's start with energy small weapons. First of all, PD lasers. Good all-around point defense system. Good at dealing with rockets, for example. And pretty decent at taking out small fighters. Those annoying buggers flying around your ship. But when it comes to ships, the damage is quite piss poor. Antimatter blaster is next on our list. Poor range, limited charges. But there is one department where this weapon doesn't lack. And that is the burst damage. Pretty nice. Use it on ships that can unflank the enemy, and you will be good to go. On the ballistic weapon list is the light mortar. Why you ask? Because it is dirt cheap and the flux to damage ratio is also pretty neat. Next up, Vulcan Cannon. Well, it costs 4 points to deploy. Maybe the range is small, but when it comes to the point defense systems, it is quite insane what this thing can do. Light Assault Gun. Well, it costs 5 points. It has decent range, quite nice firepower. So if you want to add some extra anti-armor damage, it is pretty good. And now for the expensive small weapons. Railgun or Light Needler are all fine choices if you want to deal some anti-shield damage. One shoots single target projectiles and one just goes. Now I'm gonna show you 3 types of small missiles. Firstly, harpoon missiles. They have amazing finisher damage, so anything small or medium size will just get wrecked. Next up, Sabov missiles. If enemy has shields and you fire these missiles, soon there's no shield left and you can rip through him with the other stuff. And now arguably the strongest missile in the game, especially when it comes to larger targets, because if you can hit this one, it is game over. We are talking about Reapers. When you hit these bad boys, it is over, but on the faster targets, as you can see, it is quite hard to hit. But when you can get behind the target, these things are insane. Smash the like button. It helps the video to be shown to more people. It also makes my day. Let's get into the medium weapons. Starting with energy weapons, well, there's not many great choices. I prefer the phase lance. It doesn't have a great range. It creates soft flux, so not that good at breaking down shields. But still after that, it has great burst damage. And not like you have great choices in the medium energy weapon department. Ion Beam is an interesting one. I usually take 1 or 2 of them max. They have a great range, but they are not much of a damage dealers. They come in handy as a support weapon, because it fries the enemy weapons down. And they cannot shoot anymore. But still, 3 is an overkill. Usually take only 1 of them. As for the medium kinetic weapons, here you have a very interesting list of weapons where pretty much you cannot go wrong with any of them. But there are 2 weapons that stand taller than the rest of them. Starting with the hyper velocity driver. This thing is insane. It might not have the best flux to damage ratio, but with the 1000 range, this thing makes you outrange nearly everything in the game. Most of the weapons don't shoot farther than that, so from the safe distance you can tear through his shields and then deal the rest of the damage. And I use them pretty much 80% of the time when there's a medium slot. They are that good. Then there's the heavy bowler. Pretty much hyper velocity driver, but anti-armor damage. Very decent long range damage. Not super high DPS, but it gets the job done. The only reason why it is not as good as the hyper velocity driver, because the anti-shield damage in this game is, in my opinion, more important than the anti-armor. Usually rockets deal with the hull much faster. But boys, if you're asking, dual flak cannon is a good point defense system. I also like the heavy autocannon and the heavy needler. Sadly, it costs quite a hefty amount. This time it will be 4 missile launchers I will show you. Starting with the harpoons, the bigger version. And when we say it is bigger, well, it shoots more things. Meaning it finishes people faster. As always, amazing finisher missiles, and also they have much more ammo in this one. I use them quite often. Sub-offs are going in a similar direction. More missiles, meaning more bursting down the shield, and as before, more ammo to have more fun with. And yes, boys, as you can see, I'm using the same missiles. We have a Reaper launcher, but with 5 ammos. So while you might think they are the same, the ammo difference is quite huge. And come on, they are the Reapers. You don't need many of them to take down a ship. But the Annihilator rocket pod is the new boy in town. It is very good with ships that want to get right into the face, sending swarms of small missiles that just dish out damage after damage. And when they deal damage, they deal some more of it. And ships like Onslaught are just made for this rocket launcher. Wonderful. There was one thing I told you guys. In the ship guide video, there are people lurking in the comments that are probably more experienced than I am. And I think even on this video they will leave helpful comments about their preferable weapons. So give them some love in the comments below. And now for the large weapons. And what kind of type of weapons will I talk about right now? Of course, energy large weapons. Starting with Tachyon Lance. Amazing weapon, insane range, insane burst. As I said, great range with great burst. Put it on ships like Paragon and you will outrange anything. The only weakness of this weapon is it eats quite a lot of flux, but not as much as you would expect. And also it deals soft flux, so the shields won't take as much damage, but come on. The burst is insane. And also it arcs over the shield, so it does some EMP damage as well. Hands down my favorite large energy weapon in the game. Honorable mention goes to Plasma Cannon. That thing is great, but it doesn't have the range as the Tachyon Lance has it. It does crazy damage, but the insanely bad thing about this thing is it costs a lot of points to deploy on your ship, and also it eats your flux like there's no tomorrow. Ships like Odyssey can really use this weapon effectively. Autopulse laser. If you want to burst someone down, oh, really fast, I guess. A lovely thing. Large kinetic weapon, starting with Hephaestus assault gun. Great reliable anti-armor damage. It cannot really get any better than that. Mark 9 autocannon. You can compare it to the Hephaestus gun. It's very similar, just anti-shield damage. Having good range, good DPS, everything is pretty much balanced, so the shields will die, and then you will send the rockets in, making the enemy lives just so much harder. And when I usually fly my favorite ship Conquest, I take both of these on one side, so I have nice mix of anti-shield and anti-armor damage. Say hello to the Mjolnir cannon, a wonderful energy weapon, so you don't have to worry about anti-armor or anti-shield damage, because this does both. I love this thing, like just look at it, how epically it looks and sounds. It has great range, everything around it is absolutely amazing. The only sad thing that this thing does, it eats through your flux like crazy, and it also costs a lot. But you don't have to worry about your anti-shield or anti-armor damage, so that's a plus as well. And I would be probably beaten to the death if I didn't mention ghost cannons. Ridiculously overpriced. They are not flux efficient, but they have one thing going for them, and that is epic sound and epic range, meaning that most of the time enemies won't even get near you, meaning that you are safe and shooting from the distance. These things pack a punch. The only danger is when the other ship gets close to you, they will probably outshoot you because this isn't flux efficient. But you can consider this thing the most overpowered thing in the game because nothing can outrange you. If you can shoot and the enemy cannot shoot, yeah, that's not kind of fair. So if you play it smart, this thing is just very strong. And now for the large missiles, starting with Hurricane Launcher. This is in my opinion the best launcher in the game. It has great range, great amount of ammo, it looks amazing, and it just chips away at the enemy. But when the enemy ship loses its shields, it just rips. Like, come on, did you see that? The burst on this thing is insane. It has enough ammo to last you through the battle, especially if you have the expanded missile racks. It is just great. The only downside of this thing is it is hella expensive. Now we have the Locust. This is an interesting one. I didn't used to think it was good, but now I use it quite extensively, especially because it doesn't cost as much. It does great against lightly armored things because it does explosive damage, meaning that it cannot go through shields, it cannot go through armor, but when the enemy ship loses that armor, it does great amount of damage. Come on, it just looks epic. On the Conquest, I usually get one Hurricane and one Locust. The honorable mention goes to the Reaper launcher. Because come on, who doesn't want more Reapers? And, well, if we are doing weapons, fastly, let's go through the fighters as well. Dagger torpedo bombers are one of my favorites. Then longbow kinetic bombers. They overload shields quite fast. Cobra bombers, yeah, they shoot Reaper torpedoes. However, you need the support because they died quite easily. If you want some defense, broadsword heavy fighters are good. But 99% of the time, my composition of my carriers are only the bombers. I just prefer it that way. And also, flash bombers are very nice indeed. And now let's get into the tips. The first tip is you have to understand what flux means. In simple terms, how much flux does the ship have will determine how much firepower it can sustain. Right now my onslaught has 1230 flux dissipation. If all of my weapons will be firing, they will consume twice as much. So you will overload in some time. But if we put Mjolnir cannons on the ship, the flux would be increased even more, so you would get overloaded even faster. So you have to find balance in the flux consumption, because if you run out of it fast, you won't be shooting, so the weapons you put on it won't matter at all. Tip number 2. In my experience, there is never enough ordnance points to spend on the small weapons. Meaning usually the best choice is the cheapest one, and sometimes it is best to not even put anything into the small slots. Meaning, besides some small ships, you will never spec into small weapons, which is a shame, I guess, because you will have your ship. And I think this order is the most efficient way to spend your ordnance points. First of all, you will have your mandatory mods, like integrated targeting unit, extended missile racks, stabilized shields, and resilient flux conductors. Already 85 points spent. Now you will put the large weapons on. Our broadside, a large rocket launcher, as a Conquest is a broadside ship. We will leave the left side alone for now. Now, in my opinion, you will max out the flux dissipation, because as we said, this will determine how much firepower you can sustain. Medium rockets, broadside, hypervelocity, and now we don't have much ordnance points left. Also, as the medium energy weapons are usually support type, we won't put it here. That is a luxury. Now I would put on non-mandatory mods, like ECM package, and now we will put the cheapest thing we can get. I usually get PD laser, but maybe mining laser this time is better. And now the cheapest large weapon we can find, because yeah, there's not much left. And we are finished. I even had to forego putting some better large weapons on the ship, and not even taking into account the small weapons. Sadly, you usually don't have enough points for them. But that is why you will build in your most important mods that you will use always, and then you have some more points to spend. And in the end, your ship can look like this. Third tip is that probably the anti-shield damage is the most important damage type. So in my experience, around 60 to 70% of the damage I deal with shooting weapons, not missiles, is anti-shield damage, because usually the rockets will be those who will deal with the armor. But this can change when you're using energy weapons like Tachyon Lances on Paragon, because they deal same damage to the shields and the hull. The rest is usually luxury. Warning, for the next 27 seconds there will be spoilers to the late game. You have been warned. And now for the secret endgame weapons of this game. Cryo Flamer is insane, especially for phase ships. Cryo Blaster, I just cannot get over the damage per second. So even if it is maybe not good, I cannot help but use it, because come on. Particle Driver have insane shield burst. And of course the most beautiful thing in this game, the Rift Torpedo Launcher. Only downside of this thing, it eats flux. And it has quite piss poor range. If I missed your favorite weapons or you have some tips to give, please leave them down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed, guys. I will see you next time. Take care and ciao ciao.